My wife texted stuck in traffic, be home late. Then I saw her location at a hotel across town. The map pin didn't stutter, it screamed, and every mile of her story unraveled. I booked a room of my own, for one, and let reality check us out for good. It began with a simple message. Stuck in traffic. I'll be late. I replied, no problem. Drive safe. That was at 6:12 p.m. on a Thursday. The kind of gray, unremarkable evening where the world hums quietly, pretending to be ordinary. My name's Andrew, 37, father of 2, homeowner, IT manager, husband to Melissa for 11 years. The kind of man who folds laundry while watching the news and keeps a mental list of which light bulbs need replacing. Until recently, I would have sworn our marriage was unshakable. We had inside jokes, shared playlists, matching coffee mugs. Then came the small fractures. Lipstick shades I'd never seen before, new perfume, a client gifted. A phone always face down. When she called her coworker Brad her work husband, I laughed. That brittle, nervous laugh of someone pretending not to hear the warning bell. Tonight, though, I couldn't ignore it. Out of habit, I opened the GPS tracking app we'd installed after her car got broken into last year. The dot pulsed on the screen, not on I-90, not anywhere near traffic. It sat motionless outside the Lakeview Inn, a cheap roadside motel with hourly rates and neon letters missing their V. The map didn't blink. It screamed. For a long moment, I just sat there, phone in hand, waiting for reality to rearrange itself into something less humiliating. But the pin on that map didn't move. The longer I stared, the heavier it got. Like gravity had chosen that motel as its anchor and was pulling me toward it. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe her car broke down. Maybe she was meeting a client off-site. Maybe anything except what every cell in my body already knew. Denial is a remarkable anesthetic. It numbs the obvious until the truth rots underneath. So I started digging. The GPS app had a history log. I scrolled through the last few weeks, and my chest tightened. Lakeview Inn, Tuesday and Thursday evenings, 6 p.m. to around 8:30. Like clockwork. I checked the dates against her calendar screenshots she'd shown me. Late meeting, client dinner, team strategy night. Each one lined up perfectly. I opened my laptop, copied the coordinates, timestamped them, saved screenshots in a folder I called budget_review_Q3. Then, out of some twisted instinct for order, I renamed the files by date. I don't know why. Maybe because it felt less like heartbreak and more like evidence management. When I stood up, I realized my hands were shaking. Not with rage, but with clarity. For the first time in months, I wasn't confused. The haze had lifted, and underneath it all was something surgical. Cold. I went into the garage, where Melissa's car charger was plugged into the wall. Her car's Bluetooth had synced to our shared account. From there, I could access her vehicle's log, routes, stops, even speed history. She'd been meticulous in hiding her lies, but technology, unlike people, doesn't conspire. It just records. Every Tuesday and Thursday, her route led to the same street. She stayed between 2 and 3 hours. The system even noted when the engine shut off and when it restarted. Nothing random about it. I sat back on the workbench stool, surrounded by the faint smell of motor oil and cut grass, and thought about the last 11 years. The shared mortgage, the bedtime stories, the small inside jokes whispered across crowded rooms. It all felt like a movie I'd watched too many times to notice the editing mistakes. I could have stormed to that motel right then. I even pictured it, walking through that flickering neon light, knocking on the door, watching her face crumble when she realized the performance was over. But that would have been for me, not for the truth. And truth, I'd learned, doesn't survive in chaos. So instead, I planned. I backed up everything to a hard drive, emailed a copy to my work account, and printed the logs. I created a spreadsheet columns for date, time, location, and excuse. It looked disturbingly professional. Proof, not accusations. That phrase kept looping in my mind. Because accusations can be denied. Proof ends the conversation. Around midnight, she came home. Hair tousled, perfume sharp, smiling like someone who just won something private. "Sorry, traffic was insane," she said, dropping her purse on the counter. I nodded. "No problem. Kids asleep." She kissed me lightly on the cheek. Habit, not affection, and walked upstairs, humming. I stayed on the couch, listening to her footsteps fade. At 12:03 a.m., I opened a new note on my phone and typed, "Find out what room she books. Find out if Brad's car is there." No confrontation yet. That night I barely slept. Every sound from her side of the bed was amplified. The rustle of sheets, the soft buzz of her phone lighting up at 2:17 a.m. I didn't look at it. I didn't need to. The next morning, she left early, claiming a breakfast meeting downtown. I kissed her goodbye like I always did. But as the garage door closed behind her, I whispered to the empty kitchen, "This is the last lie you'll tell me." I took the day off work, called in sick. Then I drove to an electronics store and bought a small camera, one of those motion-activated dash types with Wi-Fi access. That evening, I'd planted across from the motel parking lot, disguised in an old coffee cup. It wasn't revenge I wanted. Not yet. It was confirmation. Proof that the woman who shared my home, my bed, my children's bedtime stories, was living a parallel life 40 minutes away, one motel check-in at a time. And when I finally had that proof, I promised myself I wouldn't shout, or plead, or make a scene. I'd let the silence speak for me, because silence, when wielded correctly, is louder than any betrayal. Took me a full day to decide whether to contact her. Julia Parker, 34, according to Brad's Facebook profile, his wife of 7 years, 2 kids, golden retriever, the picture of suburban stability. I'd seen her in passing once. In a photo Melissa showed me when bragging about her team's amazing holiday dinner. Julia had that quiet, gentle face of someone who still believes people mean what they say. Melissa once described her as sweet but kind of clueless. That phrase echoed in my mind like a warning wrapped in mockery. I stared at Julia's profile photo for a long time before typing the message. "Hi, I'm Melissa's husband. I think we might both be living the same lie." The 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Typing. Stopped. Then typing again. A minute later came her reply, "I'm at my sister's, but Brad's car is parked at the Lakeview Inn. Thanks for confirming what I already feared." No hysteria, no disbelief. Just the calm resignation of someone who's already rehearsed the pain. My heart sank, not from surprise but from the quiet finality of it. This was no misunderstanding. It was choreography. 10 minutes later, Melissa's name lit up my phone. You won't believe it. The traffic cleared, but I drove through some sprinklers and got soaked, going to the gym to change. I stared at the screen, at that ridiculous lie dressed as casual conversation. She always thought lies worked better if they sounded mundane. The GPS dot on the map shifted, leaving the motel, cutting through local streets, then heading toward the gym she sometimes used. I didn't reply. Then Julia called. Her voice was steady, a mix of fury and disbelief wrapped in a brittle laugh. "I turned on their lawn sprinklers," she said. "Let them feel reality hit cold." I couldn't help but smile, though the situation was anything but funny. "You actually went there?" I asked. "Oh, I didn't just go there. I parked down the block, watched his car. When I saw the curtains move, I pulled into the lot and turned on the sprinkler system. I've got the app access. Brad used our credit card for that motel once. I kept the account." They both ran out, half-dressed, cursing the universe. He didn't even notice my car. He never looks around, just in mirrors. For the first time in days, I exhaled. A real laugh, sharp and short. "Julia," I said, "I think we're going to get along." She laughed, too, the kind of laughter that comes from mutual wreckage. We talked for over an hour. About our spouses. About how the little signs had stacked up into a wall we couldn't ignore. About how both of them used the same excuses, the same phrasing, even. It was almost like they'd rehearsed the betrayal together. Julia was a teacher. Practical, methodical. "I've already called a lawyer," she said. "Not to sue him, just to know my rights. I've got 2 kids to think about. But before I burn it all down, I want them to see the flames together. Then we'll show them, I said. She paused. You're calm. I have to be, I replied. Anger's what they expect. Clarity's what they fear. We made a plan, simple, deliberate. The following Tuesday, their usual traffic day, we'd both be there. I'd handle the camera. She'd handle timing. No confrontations, no shouting matches. Just evidence. Clean, undeniable truth. After the call ended, I sat in the dark living room. The soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. Betrayal isolates you until you realize someone else is standing in the same crater. Over the next few days, Julia and I exchanged quiet messages, details, screenshots of GPS logs. She sent me one photo that nearly broke me. Brad at a company retreat, his hand on Melissa's lower back, both laughing like they just shared a private joke. Found it from last year, she wrote. He said they barely knew each other then. Melissa said the same, I replied. Guess their lies aged well. On Monday night, I prepped the camera gear again, checked the memory card, tested the lens. Julia texted. He's got a client dinner tomorrow. I'll confirm when he leaves. I responded with a single word. Ready. When Tuesday came, everything unfolded with eerie precision. Julia texted me at 6:05. He just left. Navy blazer. Black BMW. I was already parked 2 blocks from the Lakeview Inn, my camera propped discreetly behind a cracked window. The sky was bruised with evening light. At 6:22, her car arrived, Melissa's silver sedan. She parked beside Brad's BMW like she'd done it 100 times before. They didn't rush. They weren't sneaky. That was the most insulting part. They looked comfortable. Like this wasn't an affair, but an arrangement. Julia's car pulled in 10 minutes later. I could see her silhouette through the windshield, phone raised. She didn't need direction. She'd already lived through this scene in her mind. At 6:38, I pressed record. Brad stepped out of the room first, shirt half-buttoned, grinning like a man who thought he'd gotten away with something eternal. Melissa followed, hair messy, clutching her purse. They kissed quickly before splitting up. 2 clicks, 2 photos, evidence that would end everything. Julia called right after. Got it, I said. She sighed. Then let's make sure they never forget what they did. And in that moment, I realized something. Betrayal may be lonely, but revenge? Revenge has excellent company. The next morning, Julia and I met at a quiet coffee shop, the kind with exposed brick and faint jazz in the background. She looked impossibly calm, black blazer, neatly tied hair, but the intensity in her eyes was unmistakable. Controlled fury. She had spent the night gathering everything she could. Screenshots of texts, emails, even receipts for hotel stays and late-night dinners. The dashcam footage from the Lakeview Inn was already on a thumb drive, labeled meticulously by date and time. Brad hadn't even bothered to cover his tracks. Amateur hour, really, and it was our advantage. The plan was almost laughably simple in its brilliance. Riverside Plaza Hotel, Friday night, company party, spouses invited. The perfect stage. A captive audience of colleagues, friends, and extended family. Operation Truth Display was born in whispered texts over cappuccinos. Friday came. I watched Melissa from across the lobby, hair cascading in soft waves. Wearing a dress I'd never noticed before and perfume I didn't recognize. She had taken extra care with her makeup, smiling at every familiar face with that practiced warmth she had perfected over 11 years of marriage. I want everyone to see what a perfect couple we are, she said in passing, catching me in the mirror reflection as I walked past. They will, I replied, my voice low, almost inaudible. The evening progressed as a polished social event should. Chatter, champagne, congratulations for recent promotions, laughter polished like silverware. And then, as if cued by fate itself, the lights dimmed. The large projector screen flickered to life with a title card in bold. Red letters, special presentation. A hush fell over the room. People murmured, glancing at each other. Some assumed it was part of the hotel's AV entertainment. Some whispered guesses about corporate awards. Then the first slide, text messages. Names, avatars, timestamps. The room froze. Melissa and Brad's exchanges scrolled across the screen. Sweet nothings masquerading as professional dialogue. Plans for secret dinners, hotel reservations, and excuses. The air grew heavier with every slide. I watched colleagues' faces tighten. Spouses exchanged worried glances. Melissa's own smile faltered for a split second before she plastered it back in place. Julia stood by the AV booth, remote in hand, perfectly still, unblinking. She clicked to the next slide. Photographs of them entering the Lakeview Inn. Timestamped. Evidence of the traffic jam excuses. The audience gasped. A few whispered. Incredulous. Melissa's jaw tightened. I could see her trying to suppress the instinct to grab the remote, to erase our narrative, to control the story as she always did. But she was too late. Each piece of evidence played on the big screen, undeniable. Then came the receipts, room charges, 2 dinners, minibar tabs. All matched the timeline of our GPS logs. The silence became almost unbearable, the kind that presses into your chest and makes it hard to breathe. People began shifting in their seats. Some stared at Melissa, some at Brad, some at the screen, trying to reconcile the image they'd held with the one unfolding before them. Julia's fingers hovered over the remote, and then she clicked again. The dashcam footage. The angle was perfect. Melissa and Brad laughing in the motel parking lot, oblivious to everything else. I felt a quiet satisfaction. Not vengeance, not anger, but the cool clarity of truth revealed. Melissa froze mid-step as the video played, her lips parting in disbelief. Brad, pale, couldn't even meet anyone's gaze. The colleagues who knew them looked shocked, murmurs rising into the hum of the room. Looks like traffic cleared, I muttered under my breath, echoing her own absurd excuse from earlier in the week. Julia gave me a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of the teamwork that had brought us here. By the time the last frame of the dashcam footage faded, the projector clicked off, and the lights returned, the room had shifted. Shock had given way to quiet judgment, curiosity, and a little embarrassment for the couple who tried to present perfection while hiding duplicity. Melissa didn't speak. Brad barely muttered an apology to no one in particular. The air was thick with unspoken acknowledgement. Their story had ended, and we had written the final chapter. And through it all, I realized something vital. Revenge doesn't need drama to sting. It only needs truth. Melissa froze as the final dashcam clip ended, her eyes wide, lips trembling. Then the dam broke, and tears streamed down her face like a sudden summer downpour. Brad stumbled backward, his voice cracking as he tried to explain, "It's not what you think." Too late. I said nothing more than a quiet, deliberate statement. Your GPS already told me everything. No shouting, no accusations, no need for dramatics. Just the truth, measured and undeniable. I turned on my heel and walked out, letting the murmurs of the stunned audience wash over the two of them like a tide. The drive home was silent. Chicago's streets blurred past under the glow of traffic lights. I felt the weight of 11 years lifting in increments I hadn't anticipated. By the time I reached our empty house, I made a decision. No calls, no confrontation. Let the dust settle on their wreckage while I rebuilt from mine. That night, my phone erupted. 20 missed calls, dozens of messages. Her name, Brad's name, desperate pleas, threats, begging. I turned the phone off, packed lightly, and booked a single room at the same Lakeview Inn she had frequented. Just one room, one guest, me. I didn't need anyone else to witness my recovery. The week that followed was methodical. I filed for divorce with the precision of someone who had studied the paperwork for days, anticipating every argument she might raise. Brad's career imploded. The HR department discovered his violations. The company's zero-tolerance policies had been blatantly ignored, and he was let go immediately. Melissa, facing scrutiny from both the company and legal advisors, was demoted and quietly transferred to a different branch. Julia and I continued our alliance, but differently now. No cameras, no covert operations. Just the occasional exchange of documents, updates, and reminders that we had survived being played. Quietly, deliberately, we rebuilt our own lives without the shadow of betrayal hanging over every conversation. One evening, weeks later, I caught myself laughing at something absurd. A joke on a late-night show, a meme Julia had sent. Felt foreign at first, the weight of humor returning to me. Not out of bitterness, not as a weapon, not as revenge, but as freedom. For the first time in months, I realized the life I thought had ended was still waiting. Altered, yes, but intact. The mortgage, the kids, the routines, the small suburban comforts, they weren't ruined. Only the illusions had collapsed. And that collapse had brought with it something stronger. Clarity, dignity, and a quiet, unshakable power. Melissa and Brad faded from my daily thoughts, relegated to the archives of betrayal, like old news articles you read once and then forget. Julia and I shared small victories. Text confirmations of her ex-husband finally learning the truth. Minor victories over lingering injustices, but nothing more dramatic than our occasional laughter over the absurdity of it all. I went to bed that night in silence, windows open to the cool fall air. For once, the world felt ordinary and safe. No more alarms, no more secrets, no more lies. Just the simple rhythm of breathing, thinking, and knowing that the truth, once revealed, had a way of restoring order on its own. And in that quiet, I finally let myself hope again. Hope for a life untainted by deception. For evenings with my children filled only with stories and laughter, not suspicion. Hope for the kind of peace that doesn't demand confrontation. Only patience, and the courage to wait for justice to unfold. For the first time in years, I slept without dread. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Melissa moved into a smaller apartment across town. The kids spend most of their time with me, weekends with her. The house feels lighter now, the rooms breathing again, free from the invisible tension that had lingered like smoke. Brad vanished. Rumor has it he's somewhere in Florida, living under a new name or simply hiding from the consequences he never imagined would catch up with him. Melissa is in therapy, as she promised, learning honesty, accountability, or at least that's what she says. I wish her luck. Hope is a strange thing, necessary for her, irrelevant for me. The past is a series of lessons, and I've learned mine. As for Julia and me, it's different now. Careful, deliberate, honest. No hidden schedules, no secret GPS dots. Our kids interact naturally. Laughter filling rooms rather than fear or suspicion. Quiet dinners, shared homework, weekend soccer games, ordinary life. Extraordinary for its simplicity. Our home feels alive again. I deleted the GPS app that had been both weapon and witness. A symbolic gesture that the map had spoken its last truth and I no longer needed it. People at work ask if I still trust others. If I worry about betrayal or if I'd be cautious in new relationships. I smile, the curve of it genuine, measured. I do, I tell them. But I also trust my gut. It's not about paranoia. It's about knowing the weight of intuition and acting on it. Sometimes the first clue is tiny, overlooked. A map pin, a shadow, a quiet movement. Sometimes ignoring it is how lies grow into disasters. For Julia's birthday, I gave her a tiny desk sprinkler, the kind she could keep at work or home, with a small tag tied in twine. In case of emergency, activate truth. She laughed, her eyes glinting, and I knew she understood. Not a threat, not a joke, but a reminder of the chaos we survived, and the clarity we found on the other side. That's how it ended. A story born from a lie, grown in secrecy, and finished with precision. Betrayal revealed, justice quiet but absolute. Sometimes the shortest route to freedom starts with a single map pin that refuses to lie. And sometimes that refusal gives you the courage to reclaim your life one careful, honest step at a time. The storm had passed, and in its wake I found calm.